The letter from the slave quarters revealed the mistress's betrayal, and the punishment was brutal. I know, because I was the one who paid the price. The letter appeared in my hand before it appeared in the world. It was dawn at Santa Rosa Plantation, 1852. The slave quarters still smelled of tired bodies, cold smoke, and damp cloth. Most people slept, turning from time to time on the hard floor, searching for a piece of dream that didn't hurt. I was awake. After that night, sleep had become a luxury I no longer knew how to use. My name is Joaquim. Back then, I was just the blacksmith, the forge man, the strong arm of Colonel Augusto. But the letter gave me a different name: guilty. I found the paper in a place where almost nothing escapes. In a crack in the wall of the slave quarters, near the corner where the women usually prayed softly after the day's work. It was a piece of yellowed paper with folded edges and a dark stain that might have been sweat, a tear, or blood. When I pulled it out, it came slowly, as if the clay still wanted to hold it. I shouldn't have read it, but in that place, everything forbidden feels like the only thing that still belongs to us. I opened it. The handwriting was crooked but firm. It was the hand of someone who'd learned to write in secret, stealing a glance at a mistress's primer and an earful of a priest's prayer. It wasn't the handwriting of a white lady from the big house. It was handwriting from the slave quarters. And in the first line, I read what should never have been put on paper. Tonight I saw with my own eyes Mistress Isadora lying in the arms of the black man Joaquim in the forge after the lights of the big house went out. My name, written right there, like a sentence. Until that day, if anyone asked who I was, I answered with work. I'm the one who beats the iron, the one who makes horseshoes, chains, hinges, the one who fixes what others break. I'd been born on another plantation, near a river that smelled of fresh fish and good mud. My mother, Maria, had hands that knew how to plant and could predict when the sky was about to change. She used to say, "Freedom starts in here, my son," and she'd tap her chest. If the body ever catches up, that's a bonus. My father I barely remember. More than anything, I remember the sound of wood being sawed, the smell of sawdust, and him teaching me to hold a tool as if it were part of my hand, not a weapon. When Santa Rosa bought me, I was just over 20, carrying pain older than I was. I knew how to work the iron, and I knew a bit of reading, something Dona Rosa, an old servant, had taught me at night, guiding her knobby finger across the letters of old newspaper used to wrap meat. It was in the forge that I saw Mistress Isadora up close for the first time. She walked in like someone who knew she shouldn't be there. Lavender scent, a dress too light for all that soot. The overseer, Bento, walked ahead of her, hat in hand, eyes lowered. "Mistress, this is the dirty part of the plantation. Your dress will stain." She answered, "The air is heavy everywhere, Bento. The only thing that changes is who's holding the whip." I should have kept quiet. A blacksmith doesn't answer a mistress. But I looked up. Her eyes met mine, as if by accident, and stayed longer than they should. She brought a pretext, a broken plow, a hinge that squeaked, a piece that needed a technical eye. She spoke to me as if I were merely a craftsman she'd hired, not a man her husband could sell tomorrow for the price of a fence. Her voice wasn't sweet, it was restrained, the voice of someone who had learned to squeeze herself into other people's expectations. But that day, a question slipped out. "Have you always worked with iron?" I answered, "Before, I worked with whatever they allowed me, mistress. Now I work with what chains me." She held her breath. The mistake was born right there. Not in a bed, not in a kiss. It was born in a sentence that crossed the line between the big house and us. That was when I stopped being just a pair of hands and became someone in her head. And that alone was already a crime on that plantation. It didn't happen overnight. The forge became a place of small conversations, hidden behind the noise of hammering. She'd come to inspect a tool, to supervise a repair, to learn about the craft. Always with Bento pretending not to see, because it was easier to ignore than to be responsible. We talked about simple things: the heat, the rain that never came, the church bells, the smell of the land before harvest. But one day she asked, "What did your mother's voice sound like?" I wasn't expecting it. I almost lost the hammer's rhythm. "She sang softly," I said. "I never knew if it was a prayer or a warning." "And today, who sings for you now?" I laughed awkwardly. "Today the iron sings, mistress, but its song always ends in chains." Silence. She removed her glove and ran her fingers along a cool iron bar, as if trying to understand my world through texture. After that day, she didn't return just with excuses. She returned with a different air, with questions no one asked a slave, questions that smelled like danger. Rosa was the first to notice. She pulled me aside behind the kitchen. "Joaquim, be careful. A white woman who looks too closely." "At the pain of a black man never comes alone. She brings a shadow." "It's nothing, Rosa. Just talk." Talk becomes a letter. A letter becomes a sentence. She looked straight into me. And the first one to bleed is always the slave quarters. I should have listened better. The letter wasn't written by the mistress. It was written by someone who saw. In the slave quarters, everything sees. The women shared little water, little space, and too many secrets. One of them, Inacia, hated the growing closeness. She always said, whenever a white woman looked too long at a black man, disaster followed. She saw the mistress leaving the forge late. She saw her coming down the back stairs at the wrong hour. She didn't read well, but knew how to write enough to wound. One rainy night, convinced the whole world slept, she stole a half-used charcoal stick and a scrap of wrapping paper, crouched in the darkest corner of the quarters, and began. If one day someone wants the truth about what the mistress has been doing, let them read these lines. "Today I saw." Line by line she poured everything. The meetings, the looks, the way Isadora held my hand when I smashed a finger at the anvil. She didn't lie, but she didn't understand everything either. To her, it was simply a white woman betraying her husband with her black man. To me, it had been the first time in my life someone from the big house looked at me and saw a human being. When she finished, she hid the letter in the wall crack. I found it days later. When I read it, my legs almost collapsed. She had written everything the world suspected but had never proven. I knew instantly. If this letter reached the wrong hands, the blood on the ground would be mine. I tried to destroy it, but something, maybe my mother's voice, stopped me. I hid it against my chest. The worst decision of my life. Because secrets don't want to stay still. They look for a way out. That same week, everything exploded. Sunday morning. The big house smelled like coffee, baking bread, and hypocrisy. The colonel had returned from a trip, carrying cigars, town news, and a foul mood. Bento paced anxiously. The air felt like it was warning someone. I was heading to the forge when I heard, "Who wrote this?" The colonel's voice ripped the yard open. Even the animals froze. He was on the veranda. In his hand, the letter. Not my copy, the original. I recognized it instantly. I don't know who found it. I don't know who delivered it. But when his eyes searched the yard, they stopped on me and stayed. Joaquim. A quiet voice. The kind that already decided. I stepped forward. The world felt tilted. Isadora stood beside him, pale, eyes swollen, hand trembling. He lifted the letter and read loud. The hands intertwined in the forge. People didn't even know what intertwined meant. They didn't need to. White woman, black man, night. "Is this a lie?" he asked. I could have lied, blamed envy, the devil, anything. But her eyes were holding mine, apologizing without a sound. So I answered, "No, sir, it's a sin, but it's not a lie." The world stopped. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Isadora stepped forward. "It was my fault. He raised his hand. She fell silent. "Shut up, Isadora. Not my wife, just her name." Then the sentence, "If the slave quarters dare touch what belongs to the big house, the slave quarters will remember who commands." I didn't need more. The punishment was public, a message. They tied me to a post. The rope tore my skin. The sun burned even before the whip did. I saw Rosa in the crowd, chin raised, eyes wet. I saw Bento lift the whip. I saw, through a window, a piece of light-colored dress. Her. The first lash wasn't a sound. It was a burst of white, then red. They say there were 12. I stopped counting at 5. Somewhere between one blow and another, I heard her voice through the wall. "Stop! It was my fault!" But no one stopped. The mistress's guilt always lands on the slave's back. When they untied me, I collapsed. The world spun. The colonel said something about honor and order. No one listened. That night, they dragged my body back to the quarters. The women cleaned me, prayed over me. Rosa whispered, "The letter wasn't meant to be read, Joaquim. It was meant to be burned." I couldn't reply. "Now it's out of the paper," she said. "It's in the flesh." Everyone saw. She was right. The real letter wasn't paper anymore. It was me, marked, exposed, a warning. A month passed. My body worked again, because a slave body doesn't get the right to break. Isadora stayed locked away, her windows always closed, her food untouched, her sleep ruined. Rumors grew. The colonel will sell him, or make him disappear. Inacia avoided my eyes. Maybe she feared what she'd caused. Maybe she tried not to see it. No one wrote anything for a long time. 3 months later, whispers started. "She's teaching the children." Not in the quarters, not in the big house, somewhere in between. One afternoon, hiding behind a shed, I heard her voice teaching letters. "This is J for Joaquim, and it's not a name the whip can erase." My chest tightened. Not love. Love was too expensive for people like us. It was something else. The feeling that she was trying to give back the one thing they had tried to take from me, my name. 6 months. The plantation looked the same on the outside, but it wasn't. Children from the quarters were reading signs in town. Young people were writing their own names in the dirt. Old men were whispering, "I'm not just muscle, I'm not just pain." And I carried 2 scars. One on my back that burned when the rain came. One inside that burned when people pretended nothing had happened. The letter no longer existed on paper, but it existed everywhere. In looks, in silences, in the way people talked about the coronel behind half-closed doors. Memory is dangerous, especially in a place built on the hope that we would forget. Many years later, my hand no longer lifts a hammer, but it still lifts a pen. I'm writing this not to cleanse the mistress's name, nor to deepen my own wound. I'm writing because my mother said, "If one day they let you speak, speak. If they don't, write. If they take the paper, tell the story. Just don't swallow it." The letter from the slave quarters revealed the mistress's betrayal, and the punishment was brutal. But the greatest crime wasn't what she did to me. It was what they did to all of us, turning our pain into spectacle, turning our silence into law. If you made it this far, do one thing. Write in the comments, starting with, "I wouldn't pretend I didn't see," because that's how the cycle breaks. One day, someone refuses to look away. And when that happens, not the colonel, not the whip, not the letter, nothing can silence us again.